afternoon on this Sunday, May 11th. I'm Yuna Naufal. These are today's headlines. Campaigning begins for Syria's June 3rd presidential vote, which is expected to return President Bashar al-Assad to office despite the country's brutal conflict. At least 11 people are killed in Yemen after a suicide bomber rammed his explosives-laden car into a military police base in Al-Mukalla. This is in the southeastern part of the country. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani says his country has nothing to offer except transparency in nuclear talks with world powers. In the news today, Kataib Party Chief Amin Gemayel is stressing that contacts between various political leaderships is necessary in order to stage the presidential elections. He praised the Lebanese Forces leader Samir Geaghe's recent positive proposal to withdraw his candidacy from the presidential elections if a deal was reached to back the candidacy of another March 14 alliance member. Asked if his tour on various officials earlier during the week will pave the way for him to run in elections, he replied by stressing the importance of staging the polls and saving the republic, and explained that contacts between the leaderships is necessary at this stage because the lack of communication signifies the loss of hope. In other local news, Lebanon is pressuring the international community to establish Syrian refugee camps either in safe zones inside Syria or on the border with its neighbor, according to Social Affairs Minister Rashid Derbas. She said there is an agreement in Lebanon to pressure the international community to establish camps in safe zones in Syria or on the border. And he said this to the pan-Arab daily Ash-Sharq al-Awsat, reiterating that establishing refugee camps required a political decision. Derbas has previously said that the United Nations prefer to keep the camps away from the border for security reasons. And he also said that the government would begin implementing new measures in the next few days to limit as much as possible the burden of the refugee influx into Lebanon without specifying the measures. Campaigning for Syria's June 3rd presidential vote, which is expected to return President Bashar al-Assad to office despite the country's brutal conflict, opened this morning. The vote will be Syria's first multi-candidate presidential election, but incumbent Assad, who is facing two other presidential hopefuls, is expected to easily win a third term in office. In Damascus, his campaign has already begun. Throughout the city center, dozens of posters featuring the Syrian flag overlaid with the word "together" and Assad's signatures were on display. Portraits of him were hung at a public garden near the commercial center of Salhiyeh, along those of his late father, Hafiz al-Assad, and of chief ally Hassan Nasrallah, who heads Lebanon's Hezbollah movement. In regional news, at least 11 people have been killed after a suicide bomber rammed an explosives-laden car into a military police base in Al-Mukalla in the southeastern part of Yemen. The blast comes as government forces hunt al-Qaeda fighters in the south. And 3 terrorists were killed in clashes at a checkpoint near Yemen's presidential palace just 2 days after a suspected al-Qaeda attack on the same post killed 5 guards. This is according to the Interior Ministry. A civilian was also killed in the gunfight, which erupted at dawn after gunmen attacked the presidential guard checkpoint near Misbahi roundabout, around 500 meters from the palace. Authorities use the term terrorist to refer to al-Qaeda militants in the impoverished Arab country, where an army offensive against jihadist strongholds has been underway since April 29th. Sana'a, the capital, has been on alert for days, and tensions rose after the army said troops had entered Azan, a jihadist bastion in southern Shabwa province, prompting the United States to close its Sana'a embassy. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani says his country is nothing to offer except transparency in nuclear talks with world powers, rebuffing hardliners as negotiators seek a final deal over the Islamic Republic's contested program. The talks, resuming Tuesday, face an informal July deadline to hammer out a final deal to limit Iran's ability to build nuclear arms in exchange for ending the crippling economic sanctions it faces. While the moderate Rouhani and Iran's negotiators have the backing of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, hardliners increasingly criticize the deal as giving up too much while gaining too little from the West. Speaking to a group of Iranian medical and nuclear experts, Rouhani appeared to be trying to counter the hardliners by saying Iran would never accept scientific and nuclear apartheid by giving up its program. Coming up next in our newscast, Austria's bearded drag queen Conchita Wurst wins the 59th edition of the Eurovision Song Contest. We've got it right here. Welcome back. You're watching Future Television. Presidential frontrunner Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who ousted elected leader Mohamed Morsi, has prioritized stability over freedoms, insisting it will take up to 25 years for Egypt to achieve true democracy. 3 years after millions of protesters demanding bread, freedom and social justice ousted strongman Hosni Mubarak's regime, Sisi warned such aspirations were hindering national security and slowing a much-needed economic recovery. Since 2011, Egypt has seen 2 presidents ousted after mass street protests, a deadly crackdown on protesters that has killed scores of people, and a spate of militant attacks that has left the country deeply polarized and its economy in shambles. The situation was further aggravated when the interim authorities installed by Sisi passed a law that bans all but police-sanctioned protests. Islamic extremists blew up a bridge, killed an unknown number of people, and abducted the wife and 2 children of a retired police officer in northeastern Nigeria. This is what residents are saying amid mounting condemnation by Muslims of the Boko Haram network that abducted more than 300 schoolgirls now, nearly a month ago. The Friday night's attack comes as international efforts to help rescue the 276 girls still missing got underway. A team of French experts arrived in Nigeria, according to an official in President François Hollande's office in Paris. He said they are expert in collecting intelligence from technical and human sources and in image analysis. British security experts arrived on Friday to join Nigerian and American forces, and Britain said its aim is not only to help in the crisis over the girls, but to defeat Nigeria's homegrown Boko Haram terrorist network. Pro-Russian rebels have started to cast ballots in a self-rule vote in eastern Ukraine, a move criticized by the U.S. as illegal and which could pull the former Soviet Republic apart. Sunday's poll, carried out as 2 referendums in the provinces of Donetsk and Lugansk, where armed men hold more than a dozen towns, marks a serious deepening of the political crisis in the country. Although a yes vote would likely only be recognized by Russia, it would greatly undermine a presidential election which Ukraine is to hold in 2 weeks' time. The U.S. and the European Union see the presidential election as crucial to restoring stability in Ukraine. In comments posted on Ukraine's presidential website on Saturday, acting President Alexander Turchinov said the vote would lead a complete destruction of the economy, social programs, and general life for the majority of the population. Concerns over China's aggressive behavior in the South China Sea are at the center of the first Southeast Regional Summit hosted by Myanmar, which is hoping to demonstrate the progress it has made ever since emerging from half a century of brutal military rule. A standoff between Chinese and Vietnamese ships near the Paracel Islands as Beijing controversially relocated deep-water oil rig into territory also claimed by Hanoi has already heightened tensions this week as the annual Association of Southeast Asian Nations summit convened. The South China Sea is one of the world's most important shipping lanes, rich in fish and believed to contain significant oil and gas reserves. However, some Asian members are wary of upsetting their political and economic relationship with their giant neighbor and regional powerhouse. Brazil, the only nation to win the World Cup 5 times, is hosting the tournament for the first time since 1950, and this all starts on June 12th. Preparations for the sporting event have been marred by delays, cost overruns, construction accidents, and protests. But the focus is now starting to shift to soccer, with the opening game between hosts Brazil and Croatia. 8 people have died during the building or refurbishing of the 12 venues scheduled to host the month-long tournament. Builders are still scrambling to finish several stadiums on time before the tournament starts. In addition to the late delivery of stadiums, several key public transportation projects have been scaled back or abandoned altogether. Recife Stadium, the arena Pernambuco, contains a solar power plant which will generate the energy required to power the stadium. There, Japan, Germany, and Italy will all play group games at the venue. Austria's bearded drag queen Conchita Wurst won the 59th edition of the Eurovision Song Contest with the power ballad Rise Like a Phoenix. Worst, the alter ego of 25-year-old Thomas Neuwirth won the competition with 290 points, ahead of the common Linnets from the Netherlands with 238 points and Swedish singer Sanna Nielsen with 218. It was Austria's second victory in the competition. The country last won in 1966. This is dedicated to everyone who believes in a future of peace and freedom, a tearful Worst said as she accepted the trophy in Copenhagen, Denmark. Pushing the boundaries of gender identity is nothing new at Europe's annual song contest, an extravaganza known for its eclectic, unlistenable lineup of techno beats sometimes, love songs and pop tunes. Still, Worst had been faced with some protests before the competition, highlighting a rift between Europe's progressive liberal side and the traditional values and nationalist rhetoric of Russia and some other nations taking part.
Waking in the rubble, walking over glass. Neighbors say we're trouble. Well, the time has passed, but you're my flame. Go about your business, act as if you're free. No one could have witnessed what you did to me, 'cause you wouldn't know me today. And you have got to see to believe. From the fading light of light, rise like a phoenix out of the ashes, seeking rather than vengeance, retribution. You were won. Once I'm transformed, once I'm reborn, I rise up to the sky. You threw me down, but I'm gonna fly. Rise like a phoenix out of the ashes.
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our top stories. Campaigning begins for Syria's June 3rd presidential vote, which is expected to return President Bashar al-Assad to office despite the country's brutal conflict. 3 terrorists are killed in clashes at a checkpoint near Yemen's presidential palace just 2 days after the suspected al-Qaeda attack on the same post killed 5. And Iran's President Rouhani says his country has nothing to offer except transparency in nuclear talks with world powers. Your Sunday headlines live on Future Television in Beirut. I'm Nina Nofal, wishing you all a good week ahead.